evolved over the years. Maybe you write more concise now for, the reader's benefit, but it's still like that groove is your groove. I often, throughout my career, I still do, I often question my groove to begin with. And so that makes everything feel a little shaky. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
So if I'm judging myself that like my words are hokey or too self-helpy or too spiritual or not spiritual enough or whatever, no one's really said that. I mean, they have, but like no one says it more than me, right, about myself. Like, and so if I notice that when I'm in that headspace of like, oh, is this even real? Is this even good? Like, it all comes out with this like really shaky energy where it's not really that good because I'm kind of skating on thin ice trying to find my footing.
Yeah.
Whereas when you can just own, like, you know what, like I write an advice column or I write spiritual stuff, and if people don't like spiritual stuff, they don't have to read it. They don't have to deal with it, rather than keeping all the voices in your head. I found that makes writing stronger, a lot stronger.
That's a great point. Oh, I didn't mean if I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, you didn't. No, go ahead.
That's a great point for the readers because not all of them are diehard writers. Like, well, you are more diehard writer than I am. I still do it, but I also do the candles. I also do I do a lot of different things. So I'm not as diehard doing it. I need to do it on a daily basis, though. I really do need to do it I still journal. I do journal.
That's what I do every day. Yeah, I don't like write online every day, but yeah.
Yeah, my journaling turns into lists lately, though, or business ideas, or another, I found an old journal with all these cool book ideas. All right, so my very original point when I opened my mouth this moment was it was a good idea for readers that aren't like us. I could keep going on stuff about us, but that aren't like us and don't know their voice. Find your passion. Do you have a love of dogs? I was at the clerk of courts today. I had to, it doesn't matter. My registration, I told anyway, but my registration, I just didn't quite renew it in time. And of course, a cop stops me within 2 weeks. I was like, really? So I'm at the clerk of court today, and this woman has all these pictures of her dogs. It's dressed up in saints, with a football. I mean, it was adorable. And the person that was ahead of her said, oh, those are great pictures. And she goes, yeah, I wish I could make a living. And so I'm back in line to Steve going, she could. All she has to do is do an Instagram, a call to action. All she has to do is, and I sat there and listened to all the ways she could start a business with it. And then he looked at me, he goes, do you want to tell her? I go, I don't know if I should. And normally I would, but it wasn't my line.
People don't always want like unsolicited.
I was eavesdropping. So I was like, oh my gosh. But she's passionate about her dog. So to start something creative, whether it's photography with your animals, if you love about dogs, write about your dog. If you had something that you loved when you grew up, write about sailing. That's one of mine. I just did a speech at Toastmasters, and I said, oh yeah, if anybody ever drops out, I'm good on the fly. So they called me the day before, but I was so busy till the end of that night. So it was 8:00 that I started writing, and the speech was at 7:30 in the morning. Okay. And I went, well, okay, I'm going to do something I know, obviously. And I thought I should talk about sailing. I love sailing. But instead I talked about narcolepsy and how I had narcolepsy and I healed it. That was pretty much it. But now here's the problem with, if you're trying to do writing where you have a presentation, you have to hone in on your skills. I didn't hone in on my skills. And so I spoke, it was 7 minutes, right? So I spoke, and then the 3 points and the conclusion, I wasn't able to get to. So I was able to go, oh, blessings, yes, bye. But I was like, but if you're not doing it for a presentation, it doesn't matter if you have a beginning. It doesn't matter if you have an end. And sometimes just to open yourself up, you can like write adjectives. What do you feel about your dog? You know, and just write fluffy, shiny, this, that, cuddly, loving. And sometimes that'll butt into something else and sometimes it won't. Haikus are a cool way to open up that. How many syllables are a haiku? 11?
575, I think.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another kind of cool way. And with poetry, make up a poem. Don't have to share it with anybody. Just have fun with yourself. Now, another way is you can write, but also get watercolor paper, get watercolors. Think of a feeling that, or let's say, you want to think about your dog. Let's just say that, your dog. You just sit there and you do the meditation. You get a little calmer. You breathe deeply. You picture your dog. Take a pencil and just do some lines across it. Don't even look at it. Just make a few lines. That's it. Then you put water on some of the paper and then just choose color. Think of something and choose a color and kind of throw it on there. Then pick another color, throw it on there. And then as you look at it, it kind of becomes something. If you're thinking about a dog, there's usually some cool playful moment that'll look like a blurred dog in there. Whatever you're thinking of can kind of come out in that. It's just a cool thing. I used to do stuff like that.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that. That's a really, really cool practice.
It's really cool. And I think I did it at Unity Church one time. I used to run different stuff like that. So it's kind of writing with pictures though, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think one of the best things if people are like, I love how you said, you know, when you are kind of off in your own tangent, it's one thing, but then when you had to make it for an audience, it was suddenly like, oh, I probably should have shortened the beginning and gotten it all in, you know, like there is I agree, like that there's a definite difference between writing for yourself and writing for an audience. And it doesn't mean you have to be fake for your audience, but it does mean there's like a different energy of doing things. And one of them is you do end up, like a lot of my blog posts, online stuff start in my journal, but before they make it to like the public or to my book, for example, a lot of changes happen, mostly making it less about me and more about my audience. That's like a huge one for me personally. As far as like, okay, so here's how I feel, here's this, how can I make this useful for my audience? How can like someone read this and go, yes, that's me? Even if I'm technically telling a story about myself, you know, how can I cut out all the boring parts? How can I, you know, especially because I write online, how can I make it so people get the juiciness of it quickly before they scroll away, you know? So that's something I'm learning. I'm not that great at copywriting, but I'm interested in getting better and learning more about like how to tell stories to an audience like that. But it is interesting. I really can relate to that. And I think for a lot of people who maybe have thought about starting a blog and haven't, or, you know, who would like to start sharing their writing more, there's definitely a balance that you have to strike, and you're gonna like kind of play with it. Sometimes you'll write things that are a little more focused on you, and there's like a spectrum, right? Sometimes you'll focus on them and you'll find a good groove. You'll figure out what resonates better with your audience, but I can totally relate to what you're saying there. Something interesting that I love is that I really do think for the most part, there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be someone being like, so I self-published my book, for example. There's plenty of people who left me bad reviews, like, oh, if this was good enough, it would, you know, a real publisher would have published it, you know? And there's always going to be people with that kind of attitude about anything. Most of the time, those people are not like on the court doing things. They're sitting on the sidelines being mean behind a keyboard. So like that's kind of like, if anyone listening is considering sharing more of their life and writing and they're scared to, I want you to know that like most of the criticism, you will receive criticism, but a lot of it you can just not worry about, because it's like people whose opinions really don't matter. But for example, there's a whole genre called Instagram poetry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so it's like really it's sort of like really simple, a little like emo poems, right? And it's, for the people who like it, there's like raving fans. There's also tons of people in the literary community that are like, that's not real, that's stupid, that's dumb, you know, because it's not what they, you know, what they would consider good poetry. But the reality is, if people love it and it's touching people, how is it not real?
Exactly.
I mean, it's like mystery novels, right? Like someone can write, like Mary Higgins Clark has probably like hundreds of mystery novels. Would someone say it's not real literature? Sure, but like also a lot of people read them. John Grisham, that kind of thing. So I think that goes back to Tasha, what you were saying about staying in your groove, staying in your lane. Someone out there is going to say it's stupid or cynical or whatever, and you just need to kind of focus on what your actual work is, and only take the feedback that's actually from someone you respect.
Yes. And that is huge. All right. So strangely, I repositioned my legs and forgot what I was saying. So, but that is really huge. You just mentioned the staying in lane.
We're talking about Instagram poetry, different like genres that are popular, but maybe not seen as critically acclaimed.
Thank you. That was awesome. Okay. So in that, I think if we have a desire to share in that way, somebody wants to read it. They may not know they want to read it, but somebody will be touched in a positive way because you shared your heart, your soul, and your funniness, or whatever it is that you're sharing. There's a guy, I watch all his Facebook Lives, and this isn't about writing or poetry, but he does this, what is it? Pop and lock, I don't know. He dances in a way I can't. You probably could. But he does, it's like this Tai Chi, but then this total breakdancing thing. I am mesmerized by it. So sometimes when I want to get creative, sometimes I just go through his Facebook and watch some of his lives because they always inspire me. And I think part of it is because he's so young and out there. And because he's out there, it's inspiring. It doesn't inspire me to try it. It inspires me to do more of what I love, but not that.
Yeah, cool.
But I really believe that if we feel a calling, there's an answer. And we don't ever necessarily need to know what that answer is. Just know that when we put something out there, somebody wanted to read it. It could be one person that you touch. It could be 1,000. You may never know. I read a quote somewhere, and I use it in different ways, but publishing poetry is like dropping a rose petal into the Grand Canyon. There's going to be somebody that sees it, but you never know who.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. All right,
that's
so
awesome.
What else? What do you want to share? Anything else about writing?
No, I think you really summed it up with if you were going to make it, make it. When I wrote my book, Robot Coconut Trees, it's a creative writing self-help book. I love it. And when I wrote it, I didn't have any other books written. And I felt this feeling like, for example, Stephen King has a really popular writing book, right? So yes. I'm thinking, oh, well, no one's going to really like mine. They're going to want to read from someone like him who's written books and like can say something on it. So I tried very hard not to write a creative writing self-help book. I tried to write a couple different books, and this is the book that kept coming out. Even when I was writing other things, I would stop my other thing, go to this Word document and add a new chapter because that was what wanted to come out. So part of it is surrendering to like what is happening. Yeah. I had read, and you know what? It turns out it was perfect for me at that time in my life. I didn't want to read from experts. The book is all about claiming that you're a writer and actually starting. I didn't really want to read from someone who has tons of New York Times bestselling. I kind of wanted to read books at the time from people who were in the process, just like me, who were figuring it out, who were going to share their story. So that's what I made. But it did require going over that hump of, okay, well, some people aren't going to like it because I'm not a published author, and that's just how it's going to be. So it really does, I really do think if you find that thing that you need to make, it's time to make it. And one more thing I have on writing for today is that, writing itself, I feel it comes from the soul, like Tasha says. Sometimes you channel it, you know, it comes from a conscious effort to get your life on paper, make up stories. It comes from, I feel very much like it comes not really from me. Like I'm just this vessel that's kind of getting it down on paper. And I don't know why I was born to do that, but it's what I was born to do. But on the writing, like on the technical side,